Raven-Symoné is one of the most accomplished entertainers of her generation, and me saying that should not be a controversial statement. Recording artist, Disney Channel record breaker, franchise builder, executive producer, director, Broadway performer. I can go on and on. She gave us decades of herself. She gave us laughter, music, and a character who looked like us. And still, even at 39, she's one of the most recognizable faces in the history of children's TV. That should be the whole story, with her legacy fully intact, honored, and celebrated. So why in 2026 is she still in interviews proving her legacy? Why did Disney induct someone else as their youngest legend before they acknowledged what Raven built? I'll tell you why. Because Disney doesn't know what to do with Black women. More specifically, Black women who built something they can't take credit for. Despite everything working against her, Raven built her legacy anyway. And that is exactly what this video is about. Hi, I'm Naya. I run The Coloring Room, a brand built around Black women being seen, not performing or earning their place, just existing and taking up space in the most beautiful way. This channel is my way of preserving our Black American princesses on screen. The page I'll be coloring is from one of my coloring books, Black Girl Cinema. I've linked a free page below so you can color along with me. Before we get into it, I'm not looking at Miley Cyrus as the one responsible. I'm looking directly at Disney. This is a video about a pattern, a very specific, documented, and deliberate pattern of how Disney, one of the most powerful entertainment companies in the world, has historically used Black women to build its brand and then quietly discard them once the foundation is set. And to understand that pattern, you need to understand a name that most people have never connected to Raven-Symoné's story, Anne Sweeney. In 1996, Disney hired Anne Sweeney as president of Disney Channel worldwide, and her mission was specific. Disney Channel at that point was a premium subscription service, meaning families had to pay extra to get it, and this model wasn't competing at the time. Nickelodeon was the top dog. Sweeney's job was to fix that, and the way she decided to fix it was by going after a market Disney had never successfully captured before: the tween, 9 to 14 years old. Kids who were old enough to have opinions about what they watched, but young enough that their parents were still paying for it. And that's what Disney cared about most: getting access to a demographic with spending power. One of the main reasons Disney hired Anne Sweeney was because they had already tested something in the early 1990s. It was called the Mickey Mouse Club. It was a variety show that featured young performers through music, comedy, and dance. And when you look at who came out of that program, they had some heavy hitters: Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, Justin Timberlake, Ryan Gosling. Disney had extraordinary talent, but they didn't have a real framework for how to build franchises around them. Then in 1996, under Sweeney's new direction, Disney launched what they called the SOOOOO Disney Programming Block. This was their first real attempt at original live-action scripted content for teens and tweens. And when I say live-action, I mean real people, as opposed to animation, which is what most people associated Disney with at that point. We were used to seeing cartoons, but this was Disney making an intentional decision to do something different on TV, to make scripted shows with real teenagers for real teenagers. And this was a big deal because Disney's entire brand identity up to that point had been built around animation. So them venturing into content for the tween market was new territory for them. This was their first real attempt at owning that space. Their very first original live action series for that audience was Flash Forward, starring Ben Foster and Jewel Stight. It ran for one season, and at this point, Disney was still figuring out what worked. They eventually started finding their footing. In 1998, they aired the famous Jet Jackson, starring Lee Thompson-Young as a teenage boy who played an action hero on TV but longed for a normal life. And I need you to remember that name, Lee Thompson-Young, because he was the first Black lead of a Disney Channel original series. And Disney has still not credited him, but we'll come back to him a little bit later. In 2000 came Even Stevens, starring a young Shia LaBeouf. This became a fan favorite that built a loyal audience. Even though it was a hit that built a fan base, it was canceled at 65 episodes. In 2001 came Lizzie McGuire, starring Hilary Duff. And I'm going to pause here for a bit because Lizzie McGuire was Disney's most successful franchise effort before Raven arrived. Hilary Duff was the blueprint for what the network was trying to build. A relatable girl next door who could anchor a show, a music career, and a merchandise line all at the same time. This show highlighted a very specific aesthetic that Disney had decided was their target. Blonde, affluent, white, aspirational. It was exactly the image the network kept reaching for. But unfortunately, this show was also canceled at 65 episodes. By 2001, under Sweeney's strategy, Disney Channel had transformed from a premium add-on into a basic cable staple. It was now in every home, and it needed another star. So by the time 2003 arrived, Disney had proven that they could produce popular shows. They had a proven formula that they used to build stars. And they also proved repeatedly that they were willing to cancel those stars at the height of their success to keep what they felt was a solid strategy. Raven is episode 1 in this new series because her story is the clearest example of how Disney treats Black women. And because she's still having to explain herself to people who genuinely don't know the history or pretend it's not that deep, it felt only right to start with her. We're going to talk about exactly what she built and what Disney gave her in return. Let's talk about who Raven was before Disney. Raven-Symoné Christina Pierman was born December 10th, 1985 in Atlanta, Georgia. And her parents knew from the very beginning that their daughter was something special. Before she turned 2 years old, they had already signed her with a local Atlanta modeling agency. She was booked. She was working. She was a professional before most children were out of diapers. Her early bookings caught the attention of Ford Models, one of the most prestigious modeling agencies in New York City. And that cosign was significant enough that her family packed up and relocated from Atlanta to New York to support her career. She was a toddler at the time. Raven appeared in national commercials for Ritz Crackers, Jell-O, Fisher-Price, and Cool Whip, brands that were in every American household. Her face was already in living rooms across the country before she ever said a single word on TV. Then, in 1989, when she was 3 years old, her family heard that Bill Cosby was casting for a film called Ghost Dad. Raven auditioned. They told her she was too young for the role, but Cosby was so struck by her presence that he went out of his way to create a role specifically for her on The Cosby Show instead. So let's run that back. She walked into an audition for a part she didn't get and left with a reoccurring role on the #1 sitcom in America at 3 years old. She debuted in the 6th season premiere of The Cosby Show as Olivia Kendall, the stepdaughter of Denise Huxtable. And she wasn't a guest appearance. She was a main cast member for 63 episodes, remaining with the show until its series finale in 1992. While she was working on The Cosby Show, the set was not a playground.
I can only tell you how the journey to The Cosby Show happened through folklore that my parents told me how to answer that question when I was younger. I do know that they grinded. My mom said she worked during the night and my dad took me to auditions during the day, or vice versa. Every night, understanding that this is a job you can't mess up. This is not for fun, but it is fun. Make sure you respect people. Don't do this, don't do that. It was a lot of rules in place.
She wasn't a child actor who was coddled or managed around. It was a professional environment with high expectations, and Raven was expected to meet that standard from day one, even at 3 years old. It was said that Bill Cosby and his production team prided themselves on running one of the most professionally rigorous sets on TV. Everyone followed the rules. Everyone treated the production as a workplace first. And Raven learned all of that, not just the technical skills, but the mentality required. Raven described her time on that set as her version of a 9-to-5 job. She was expected to show up on time, know her lines, be prepared, be present, and perform. She understood at 3 years old that she could be fired if she didn't deliver. That was the reality of the set she was on every single day. There was no grace period for being a child. The production had a schedule, a budget, and a standard, and she was expected to meet it. If that wasn't enough, she had to understand that her life would be under constant public scrutiny. That was her introduction to the entertainment industry. That is what she learned before she started kindergarten. Raven has also spoken on the responsibility of being Black in front of and behind the camera, on the importance of advocating for people of color in every department, not just on screen. She understood that what you do in this industry carried weight beyond your own career. She carried that lesson from The Cosby Show set all the way into her producing and directing work.
On a Black show, it was very important to see yourself, not just in front, but behind the camera as well. And Mr. Cosby instilled that in all of us. And I took it to Disney and I took it to anywhere I went afterwards, even when it wasn't the norm. I was like, no, I have to be able to see myself, because if I don't ask for it, who will? And I will always credit everyone on that set from top to bottom for creating who I am today and allowing me to have the career that I have, because they took a chance on someone who had never been in the industry before. But it wasn't because they were like, oh, she's so cute. Like, I did the work as well. They also pride themselves, that show, that community. We pride ourselves on being professional and knowing that it's a job, but also having fun at the same time and following the rules.
The result of all of this, the discipline, the preparation, the professional standards, the constant high pressure performance from the time she could barely walk, is what molded her into the star she is. While other child stars of her generation struggled with the transition into adulthood, Raven kept working. The Cosby Show ended in 1992, and Raven was 6 years old at the time, and she didn't stop working. In 1993, she played a younger version of Halle Berry's character in the TV miniseries Alex Haley's Queen. That same year, she joined the ABC sitcom Hanging with Mr. Cooper as Nicole Lee, a lead role she held for 4 seasons, from 1993 to 1997. She had 2 major network television credits before she was 12 years old. In 1994, she made her big screen debut in The Little Rascals, and in 1998, when she was 12, she landed the role of Charisse Doolittle, Eddie Murphy's daughter, in Dr. Dolittle. This movie was a major theatrical release, a box office hit. She returned for the sequel in 2001. Now let's talk about music, because somehow in between all of that television and film work, Raven was also building a recording career. At 7 years old, she became the youngest artist to sign a recording contract with MTA Records, and she didn't treat it casually. During her time at the label, she took vocal lessons from Missy Elliott, one of the most innovative and respected artists in the history of hip-hop and R&B. Missy Elliott was personally mentoring a 7-year-old Raven-Symoné on how to use her voice. Her debut album, Here's to New Dreams, was released in 1993. The single, That's What Little Girls Are Made Of, charted on the Billboard Hot 100. In 1996, Raven and her father co-funded their own independent label, Ray Blaze Records, and released her second album, Undeniable, in 1999. And to support that album, she toured as the opening act for NSYNC during their 1998 to 1999 tour. And NSYNC at the time was one of the biggest pop acts out, and Raven-Symoné was the opening act. This is the woman Disney was introduced to when she walked into her Disney Channel audition in 2001. She had been a working professional for over a decade. She walked into that audition originally for a show called Absolutely Psychic as a woman who had already built an industry career most adults never achieve. Disney did not discover Raven-Symoné. They inherited a legacy, and they knew exactly what they were getting. With a long list of accomplishments, Disney would be crazy not to give her a shot at a new show. That's So Raven premiered on Disney Channel on January 17, 2003. Raven was 17 years old at the time. She played Raven Baxter, a teenage girl with psychic abilities, navigating high school, family, friendships, and a power she couldn't always control. And the show was an immediate, undeniable hit. But before I give you the numbers, I need to give you one more piece of information about the machine Raven walked into, because Disney had a rule. I mentioned that Lizzie McGuire and Even Stevens were cut after 65 episodes before Raven joined Disney. And that was because Disney had a policy for it. It was called the 65 episode rule. The network believed that kids aged out of shows, so their strategy was deliberate. Cancel the most popular series right at the peak of popularity, and then rotate in fresh faces, fresh merchandise cycles, and fresh investment. They even had a name for it internally. They called new talent virgin real estate. Let's think about that phrase for a second. Virgin real estate. That is how Disney described the children they were about to build franchises on. But under this rule, shows like Lizzie McGuire and Even Stevens, beloved, successful, still pulling audiences, were canceled before they could reach their full potential. Not because they failed, but because Disney decided that their shelf life had expired and it was time to move on to the next thing. And then came Raven. That's So Raven was so successful that Disney could not justify pulling the plug. She broke their own rule. It became the first Disney Channel show to reach 100 episodes, and it forced the network to scrap the 65 episode policy entirely. Raven did that. She restructured the entire operating model. Every long-running show that came after her, Hannah Montana, Wizards of Waverly Place, Sweet Life, existed inside of a framework that Raven forced Disney to build. Now let me give you those numbers. That's So Raven became the highest rated original program in Disney Channel's history. It was the first Disney Channel original series to reach more than 3 million viewers. It was the first to exceed 3 seasons, and it became the first to reach 100 episodes. And I keep coming back to that number, 100 episodes, because that isn't just a milestone. It became a business category. In broadcast television, 100 episodes is the threshold for syndication. And syndication is what happens when a show gets sold to other networks. So local stations, cable channels, international broadcasters. It's how a show goes from something people watch when it airs to something that's always on and available. Any of the shows that you grew up watching as reruns after school, the ones that were always available no matter how much time passed, that is syndication. And 100 episodes unlocks this. Raven herself has noted that because of the show's syndication success, she still receives residual checks comparable to stars of major network sitcoms. But this was for a Disney Channel show because she got to 100 episodes. And before Raven, no Disney Channel original series had ever gotten there. Disney made a deliberate decision to greenlight a 4th season specifically to hit 100 episodes. Under Anne Sweeney's leadership, Disney made a fundamental shift in how they thought about their stars. They stopped treating them as actors who appeared in shows. They started treating them as what the industry calls integrated brand properties, multi-platform franchise assets that Disney could own and monetize. What that meant is that Disney didn't just want Raven on a screen. They wanted her on a lunchbox, a doll, a soundtrack, a clothing line, a movie, a video game. They wanted to own every aspect of her image and extract value from all of it at the same time. Raven was the first girl they fully tested that model on, and it worked beyond anything that I'm sure they anticipated. And I want to address Lizzie McGuire again because I know some of y'all will probably bring her up, and I want to be fair. Hilary Duff was the first Disney Channel star to achieve significant multi-platform success. The show had merchandise, it had a movie, it had a music career attached to it. But here's the distinction that matters. Lizzie McGuire was the initial attempt. Raven-Symoné was the one who forced Disney to rewrite its entire business model. Lizzie McGuire, for all of its success, was still a victim of the 65 episode rule. Disney still canceled it at its peak. The merchandise associated with Raven had become a lifestyle brand, generating over 400 million in sales through dolls, apparel, video games, and clothing lines. Raven's specific talent, her comedy, and her ability to sustain an audience who remained invested across demographics made the show durable in a way that the network had never encountered. The show was nominated for Outstanding Children's Program at the Emmy Awards in both 2005 and 2007. It also launched Disney Channel's first spin-off series, Cory in the House. She also became the first Black woman to have her name in a Disney Channel comedy series title. First, as in before Raven, it never happened. And the title of a show is not just a name, it's a statement of whose story it is. Everything revolves around her. She's not the best friend and she's not the sidekick. She was the show. Disney Channel had been making original live action content since the mid-1990s. By the time That's So Raven premiered in 2003, that is nearly a decade of programming. Shows with titles like Lizzie McGuire, Even Stevens, the famous Jet Jackson, and all of that time across all of those shows, not one of them has centered a Black woman so completely that her name was literally in the title. Not one. By season 4 of That's So Raven, when she was 19 years old, Raven-Symoné earned an executive producer credit on her own show at Disney Channel. No girl star before her had ever held feel that level of creative ownership inside the Disney machine. She wasn't just a face on a lunchbox, and she wasn't being managed or deployed by executives who owned her image. She was in the room. She had creative authority and the ability to influence scripts. And she didn't stop there. She led the Cheetah Girls, the first Disney Channel original movie musical, which pulled 6.5 million viewers, a record at the time. That template became the blueprint for High School Musical, Camp Rock, and every Disney Channel original movie musical that followed. I feel like that's like such a tongue twister. The soundtrack from the Cheetah Girls movie was certified double platinum. Around the same time, she voiced Monique in Kim Possible. She appeared in The Princess Diaries 2. She released a solo album, This Is My Time, through Disney's own Hollywood Records. Every long-running Disney franchise that came after That's So Raven, they existed in a framework that Raven forced Disney to build. Those shows were not just inspired by That's So Raven. They reaped the benefits of Raven proving to its executives and board members that a teen-led show could sustain more than 3 seasons. She didn't just star in a show that became successful. She changed the business model of one of the most powerful entertainment companies in the world. She transitioned Disney Channel from a network that treated its stars as disposable short-term property into a network that understood how to build long-term multi-platform franchises around the right talent. And then they took that model and proof of concept that Raven had delivered and built to the next era of Disney Channel around someone else. And here's what Raven has said herself in an interview. I was famous at 3 years old, and I had been on multiple television shows before I got on That's So Raven. Disney knew it, but also didn't play that up to build the brand. And that's not her complaining, that's her stating a fact. Disney had every piece of information they needed to position Raven as the once-in-a-generation star she was, but they chose not to. The question is why? And before we get into Hannah Montana, I have to mention a specific episode from That's So Raven. There's an episode from season 3 called Going Hollywood. It aired on November 4th, 2005. It was a test episode that was inside of an existing show to gauge audience interest. Disney had written an episode that introduced a brand new character, a young actress named Allie Parker, played by Allison Stoner, who was navigating the tension of being a famous child star while trying to live a normal life at school. Raven and her family were essentially the vehicle to introduce this new character to their existing audience. The proposed spinoff was called Better Days, and it would have starred Allison Stoner. It fell through, but 4 months later, in March of 2006, they premiered Hannah Montana, a show about a young girl living a double life, a pop star on stage, a normal teenager at school, the same core concept. That was developed inside of Raven's show. It was tested on her audience. And another thing that I find really interesting is that Hannah Montana's co-creator, I'm going to put his name on the screen because I don't know how to say his last name, he also co-created That's So Raven. For about a year, both shows existed on Disney Channel at the same time, but something shifted. And just in case some of y'all weren't listening the first time I made this disclaimer, this is not about Miley Cyrus. Miley Cyrus was a child, a teenager. She didn't design Disney's promotional strategy. She didn't decide who got the bigger billboard or the better merchandise deal or the more prominent placement. She showed up and did her job, and she did it well. What I'm talking about is more structural. Disney ultimately decided which of these two women were worth more investment. And part of understanding that decision is understanding the story Disney liked to tell about its stars. Disney, under Anne Sweeney, had a preferred narrative, a Cinderella story. The ordinary girl, unknown from somewhere regular, who gets discovered and transformed by the Disney machine into a global superstar. That story was sellable. It was aspirational. It was a story that told every kid watching at home that it could happen to them too. They couldn't tell that story about Raven. Raven walked in at 17 with a decade of professional credits. She had a recording career, a modeling portfolio. She had co-signs from big names in the entertainment. She wasn't a discovery, and she wasn't a Cinderella. She was a seasoned industry veteran who arrived already formed. So instead of Disney leaning into that and marketing her existing legacy, they didn't do that. They used what she bought and built on the foundation she created. And when a new girl who came along and fit the Cinderella mold perfectly, someone who was younger and relatively unknown outside of her father's fan base, with a built-in country music backstory that middle America would embrace, the machine knew exactly what to do with her. And the story Disney wanted to tell had a very specific aesthetic attached to it. Researchers who study media and girlhood have a term for it. They call it luminosity. Luminosity. Luminosity in this context refers to the specific visual language Disney uses to signal which girls are worth aspiring to. So sparkle, shine, sequins, stage lights. It's the idea that a girl's specialness could literally be seen, that it radiated off of her, that she glowed in a way that ordinary girls didn't. That was what Disney was selling. And Hannah Montana was the perfect vehicle for it. If you think about the show's entire premise, Molly Stewart is a regular girl. She has a normal house, she goes to a normal school, and has normal problems. But secretly, she's Hannah Montana, a pop star with sequin outfits, sold out concerts, a wig that transforms her into someone luminous and extraordinary. The fantasy the show was selling was that the sparkle was already inside of her, she just needed the right conditions to let it out. That's a marketing strategy. Disney was selling a very specific version of girlhood, one that looked high achieving, aspirational, and conventionally beautiful. And here is the part that researchers are also very clear about when we talk about luminosity. It wasn't distributed equally. The one Disney granted this glowing, aspirational visibility to was consistently white, consistently thin, and consistently aligned with what the network considered a safe, middle class, and globally marketable. There was a specific recipient who got access to that sparkle. Now let's look at how Disney marketed Raven. Raven Baxter was not luminous in that sense. She was loud, she was physical, she was silly, and a lot of times out of control. She was constantly seen on the show falling down, wearing ridiculous disguises, covering herself in whatever the scene required. She was celebrated for being unruly, and her audience loved her for it. I loved her for it. Raven's relatability wasn't a fantasy funded by a secret pop star alter ego. It was rooted in actual teenage struggle, the embarrassment, the miscalculation, what it looks like when you try your best and you still get it wrong. But the pop princess fantasy was the most globally monetizable version of girlhood that Disney had. And it translated across markets. And Disney did not just test the double life concept inside Raven's show. They had been testing it for years, and they kept giving it to white girls every single time. In May of 2003, the same year that That's So Raven premiered, Disney released the Lizzie McGuire movie. In it, Lizzie McGuire goes to Rome and is mistaken for an Italian pop star named Isabella. She's literally transformed over the course of the film from this awkward teenager into a glamorous international pop star. The whole fantasy of the ordinary girl who discovers that she's secretly extraordinary, you know, the sparkle, the stage lights, designer clothes. Disney had already put that on a movie screen before Raven or Hannah Montana. But then Raven's show launched, and it was their biggest hit ever. Around the same time, Raven was starring in The Cheetah Girls, which was a musical movie where she was already playing a girl with pop star ambitions. Now, my argument is not that Disney should have made Raven into Hannah Montana. Disney had a star whose audience had already shown them exactly what they wanted more of, and Disney chose not to give it to them. Raven's fans were responding to the comedy, the fashion, the music, the diverse girl friendships that were the center of the story. The Cheetah Girls formula specifically, 4 girls, big dreams, style, ambition, and each other, that was its own lane. That was its own franchise waiting to be built, and it was already working. The Cheetah Girls soundtrack, like I said before, was a certified double platinum. The Cheetah Girls 2 soundtrack was also a certified platinum. Combined with her other Disney soundtracks, Raven's music sold over 4 million copies between 2003 and 2006. Her audience was not confused about what they wanted from her. So what did Disney do when That's So Raven ended? They casted her in A College Road Trip, a comedy about a girl going to college with her overbearing father. It wasn't a musical, it wasn't a fashion franchise, nothing related to the specific things her audience had proven that they loved. They also released her solo album in 2008 with no major promotional support. It peaked at 159 on the Billboard 200, and that was not good because this was the same artist whose collaborative soundtracks had sold millions. And then they made the Cheetah Girls one world without her. The franchise Raven built, the formula she proved. They continued it without the woman who made it matter in the first place. And Raven has said that she felt excluded from that third film. Disney took the Cheetah Girls framework, black girl, music, friendship, ambition, and took out its most recognizable star and continued profiting from the format anyway. And then a decade passes before they brought her back. A decade. This is what I mean when I say Disney didn't didn't know what to do with a Black woman who built something they couldn't take credit for. It's not that they tried to replicate Raven and failed, it's that they never tried to develop what she had actually built into something bigger. They learned the lessons from her and then applied them to other stars, and they let Raven's specific lane, one that was culturally specific, Black girl centered, go. And the sources are very direct about what this means racially. Disney used what they called a colorblind strategy with Raven. They made the Baxter family aspirational in a very specific way: dignified, middle class, professional, respectable. Blackness was present, but it was carefully framed to align with white middle class values. It was made palatable. The show could address racism in a single episode, like True Colors, but it couldn't address it as a system, because of course addressing it as a system would have disrupted the whole colorblind fantasy Disney wanted to maintain. Raven's Blackness was allowed on screen, but it wasn't allowed to be complicated. And when Disney looked at its next chapter of stars, it chose the aesthetic that required the least amount of management. It chose the girl whose image it could project on a global stage without friction. Raven has mentioned several times in interviews that she has acknowledged the talent that Disney has produced. She specifically acknowledged Miley's talent. But I do feel like Raven has tried to describe the system that looked at a thin white girl and saw a global franchise, and looked at a Black girl who had already built them a global franchise, and somehow Raven is the one that had to keep proving herself. In 2024, Disney inducted Miley Cyrus as the youngest Disney legend in history at 31 years old, while Raven-Symoné, who had given Disney literally decades of her life, her body, her art, and her labor, was not inducted first. And of course, when that announcement came out, we, her fans, responded immediately. Fans were pointing out that Raven had starred in That's So Raven and Raven's Home, that she had starred in The Cheetah Girls 1 and 2, that she had appeared in The Princess Diaries 2, that she had directed episodes of Disney shows. And Miley, who again is talented and whose work is real, got the honor first. Miley has commercial success, and it is also undeniable. And like everything else I've stated so far, I'm gonna stick to the facts. Hannah Montana premiered in 2006 to 4.4 million viewers. The franchise generated billions of dollars across 2 double platinum soundtracks, a #1 box office movie, home entertainment, apparel, video games, and junior novels. Her Best of Both Worlds tour broke ticket sale records. Her 3D concert film became the #1 concert film of all time up to that point, grossing over $70 million. In 2024, she won her first Grammy for her song Flowers, and a single episode in 2007 drew 10.7 million total viewers. So the commercial case for Miley Cyrus being a Disney legend is real. But let me tell you about the show that made all of that possible. That's So Raven premiered in 2003 to 3.5 million viewers. Itself a Disney Channel record at the time. No Disney Channel show had ever crossed 3 million viewers before Raven did it. And her most watched episode, Country Cousins, drew 10.8 million viewers in July of 2005, a full 2 years before Hannah Montana. So when people say Hannah Montana was simply a bigger show than That's So Raven, I need them to explain those numbers, because the data doesn't support that. What the data supports is that Disney invested more in promoting one show over the other. And we have spent this entire video establishing who got that investment and who did not. But let's talk about the Disney Legend Award. And for those of you who don't know, the Disney Legends Award is the highest distinction that the Walt Disney Company can give an individual. It's existed since 1987. It's their Hall of Fame. It's an official, permanent acknowledgement that you made an extraordinary contribution to the company's legacy. This award isn't a fan vote, and it's not a popularity contest. It's a selection committee of longtime Disney executives and historians deciding who deserves to be immortalized as part of the Disney story. I specifically mentioned Miley's numbers because what I'm about to say is not about diminishing those numbers. It's about asking whose numbers Disney chose not to see. So let's go back to the selection criteria. To become a Disney legend, you need to have made a big impact to the company. The committee values broad and sustained impact, commercial and cultural significance. And this is the one I need you to pay attention to. They also mention brand loyalty and the ability to grow within the Disney family. Raven-Symoné has been with the Walt Disney Company for over 30 years. She starred in That's So Raven and executive produced Raven's Home, which was a spinoff that ran for 6 seasons and introduced her legacy to a whole new generation. She's mentored new talent inside the Disney ecosystem. She has been a loyal, productive presence inside of Disney for 3 decades, and she has not been inducted, not before Miley and not after Miley. And at the ceremony, Miley gave an emotional speech. She jokingly apologized to Mickey Mouse for her malfunction between 2003 and 2016, which was a reference to her public rebellion against the Disney brand. And she also said that I stand here still proud to have been Hannah Montana because she made Miley in so many ways. Hannah Montana made Miley, but who made Hannah Montana possible? Who built the model that Hannah Montana was deployed inside of? Who broke the institutional rules that gave Hannah Montana the runway she needed? Who proved that a girl-centered Disney franchise could sustain, expand, and generate hundreds of millions of dollars before anyone knew Miley Cyrus's name? Now, I will mention that as I was doing the research for this video, I do feel like the reason why Disney chose to honor Miley when they did was more of a strategy because they wanted to capitalize on her current success after her Grammy win. If they could capitalize off of the success that she had already earned, then that would generate positive press for the company. Now, here's the part that irritates me so much because here we are in 2026 and Disney has announced their next class of legends. The ceremony is scheduled for August 16, 2026 at the Honda Center. And I need you to look at this list very carefully. Some of the names stand out to me, like Anne Hathaway, Dwayne Johnson. I did have to look up some of them, but there are 11 honorees. And yes, these people deserve to be on this list. Like I didn't realize Lin-Manuel, his songwriting contributions were for Moana and Encanto. So I definitely do feel like, yes, that is amazing. Anne Hathaway's work in The Princess Diaries is real, right? These are genuine, legitimate contributions to Disney's legacy. But I need you to look at that list one more time. The Jonas Brothers are on it, cited for their work on Camp Rock and their Disney Channel sitcom Jonas. The Jonas Brothers. They came to Disney Channel in 2007 after Raven. They walked through the door that Raven built. The Jonas Brothers are receiving Disney legend status before Raven-Symoné. And Raven-Symoné is still not on this list. Now, before y'all come at me, because I know some of y'all hear what you want to hear, it's not about the Jonas Brothers specifically. Like all of the other names that I've mentioned, they showed up and they did their jobs. They built real careers inside and outside of Disney. All right. I'm not critiquing their talent or their worthiness of receiving this award. I think it's just interesting that a group of white men who began after Raven, who built their careers on the platform that Raven made possible, are being permanently immortalized in bronze when the woman who laid the foundation is still waiting. That's not an oversight. It's a decision that is being made repeatedly by a committee of executives who know exactly what Raven built and have chosen again and again to honor almost everyone except her. So let's get back to Raven because this video really is a celebration of her. So it's 2026. She had a spinoff, Raven's Home, that she executive produced and starred in. It ran for 6 seasons and ended in 2023. She came back to Disney, gave them more, and delivered yet again. She's directing. She enrolled at the Academy of Art University. She completed a degree in fine arts. She has 5 NAACP Image Awards. She has been nominated for Emmys. She is worth an estimated 40 to 55 billion, and she has reportedly never touched the money she made on The Cosby Show. She still collects residuals from it to this day. And in her recent Mount Rushmore interview, when she could have just used that moment to center herself or take shots, she used it to say the name of Lee Thompson Young, a Black man, the star of the famous Jet Jackson, the first Black lead of a Disney Channel series, a man who passed away in 2013 and who most people have literally never heard of. Raven didn't have to do that but she did it anyway because she understands what it means to be the one who built something that others get credit for. That's not the behavior of someone who's bitter. That is someone who knows exactly what giving someone their flowers is worth. And this is the exact kind of woman that I like to color in, celebrate, and I refuse to let the world overlook. Raven-Symoné built Disney Channel's golden era. She did it as a Black girl in a body that the industry kept commenting on inside of a machine that wasn't designed for her. She laid the foundation. She named the truth, and she's still here. She deserved her flowers a long time ago. And Raven, if you're watching this, consider this video a bouquet. This is episode 1 of Disney Hates Black Women, a series where we go through the receipts and tell the whole story and give credit where it's been long overdue. And baby, we're just getting started. And if you know someone who grew up watching That's So Raven, share this video with them, hype this video so more people get to see it, not because I'm trying to make them angry, but because they deserve to know what Raven actually built. And if you want to go deeper, I have something for you in the description because everything I make so Black women are centered. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.